Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, I am very happy that my colleague has brought this resolution on the formation of National Security Council and I fully support it. There has always been the need for defense debates and even from that point of view, I welcome this particular resolution. Defense, unfortunately, has not been discussed enough in this country. That is the main reason why all our policies have been loop-sided right from the inception. I, being a member of the armed forces, and my friend have been there, and we used to watch helplessly when correct perspectives were put forward by our respective chief, whether it was the army chief or the naval chief or the air force chief. The defense ministry have been dallying. A glaring example of this is the Jaguar deal. In 1972, after the chief of air staff, after much discussion, put forward this proposal, but we saw how they have been dilly-dallying about it, and we went in for it when the British Airspace Company was disbanded in 1978. If we had purchased it in 1972, the cost of the Jaguar would have been rupees 1.5 crores. Finally, we bought it at a cost of rupees 10 lakhs in 1978, and that too when the aircraft was getting slightly obsolete. So, discussions on defense, I think, is a good thing. Our defense ministry has been the most secretive ministry in the world. They have always kept away from the country and from the parliament about the things which the country should know, which the country should discuss, and which the country should debate. We have been putting many questions on the armed forces in this house. I have been asking very simple questions like the replacement of transport aircraft, etc. But the reply which I got from the defense ministry was, I am directed to inform you that the question has been disallowed on grounds of secrecy. What is so secret? Secrets are the war plans when your army has to move from one place to another during wartime. But these days are of satellites. Satellites are going around the world. All our defense establishments are photographed. All your material is in the defense magazine of the world. It is not secret. We would like to participate. Rupees 6,000 crores are spent on defense annually. In the sixth 5-year plan, probably about rupees 30,000 crores are to go. Out of these rupees 30,000 crores, rupees 10,000 crores is going to be probably on the import of the equipment. Are we not going to discuss it? Are we going in for Jaguars or Mirages? Or are we going to have a long-term policy? I would like to place on the table of the house today a book brought out, I do not know by whom, on the Indian Air Force on the occasion of its Golden Jubilee. The Chief of Air Staff has given the foreword to it. It has advertisements of Jaguars on its front and back pages. It has an aircraft advertisement on the first page. It shows various forces. It shows pulls and pressures which the Indian Air Force and the Defense Ministry are going through every day. But what I want to say is that this book contains, as per the Defense Ministry, a lot of secrets. This book says that there are so many helicopters, so many missile squadron This book is giving an account of which Squadron is where. There are photographs of our airfields in India. There are photographs of our aircrafts. I would like you to see this book. These are all supposed to be secret documents. They have been compiled. I want to go to some other topics, so I am not going to speak about it now, but I am placing it on the table of the house. After recess, I shall take on this matter in detail. I would like to say that rupees 6,000 crores budget will be spent this year. The 3 years back, our budget was rupees 3600 crores and now it is rupees 6,000 crores, which means the budget has gone up by nearly 50% in the last 3 years. It is a welcome thing and it is required. But what I am saying is that in spite of the money going up doublefold, the money which should go towards the armed forces service conditions is not going there. What we require today is the consolidation of the armed forces. We are buying the equipment at a fast rate, but there is no consolidation. With this money, I think our first task should be the consolidation. In our bases, our members in the armed forces are not happy. Hardly 10% have got accommodation. Let us put our money in this area. This is where it is required most. Let us analyze our defense budget of rupees 600 crores. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. There is someone who said truth is learning from facts, and I am grateful to my colleagues for giving me this opportunity to know firsthand what are the inadequacies, what are these challenges that police services face in our country in discharging their wondrous duties. I have listened with great respect to the presentations that have been made, and I do feel that the time has come when we should be integrating policing also into our planning for development purposes. This old fashioned division between the development expenditure and non development expenditure has outlived its utility, and I will go back and discuss with the Planning Commission with the Home Ministry how best we can develop our so called development and the so called non development sectors of our economy. I do feel, listening to the presentations that have been made, that there is an urgent need to look into the future, what type of police system our country needs in grappling with the challenges that are now on the horizon, and where we are, how much distance we have to travel in order to ensure that we provide our country a police system which is adequate to the challenges that our country faces. So, this is one thing which I would say we have in our systems 5-year planning for the defense forces. I would suggest to the Honorable Home Minister that maybe time has come we should form a 5-year or maybe a longer term perspective plan which would take into account the imperative need for upgrading our technology, our human resource strategies, and all the other related subjects which have been discussed. In particular, I was very fascinated by a suggestion that in certain insurgency affected areas, police should be involved in development work. I am reminded by what my esteemed friend who was at one time Cabinet Secretary in the Government of India and the Chief Secretary of Orissa. He told me about the link between the police system and the development works. He said to me that as Chief Secretary, he once received a number of senior police officers, and the police officers said that the general perception the public about the police is not very good. We want to do something which would change that perception, and so he suggested for the policeman involvement in public works. One thing that I do wish to say is that 80% of the police personnel belong to the category of constables, and I think this is certainly true that we have not paid adequate attention to ensure that the constables of the future are being produced by our policing system. Some years ago, I was told in Maharashtra that 75% of policemen live in chawls in slum areas where they interact all the time with criminal elements. Now, out of that policing system, you cannot produce men and women of integrity. I think there are lot of temptations to fall off the chosen path of goodness. So, we have to pay a lot more attention to ensuring that we provide adequate facilities for our constable housing facilities. Certainly have to improve, but also training their psychological mental makeup, and this also applies to many police schools also. The constitutional values of our republic, respect for diversity, respect for inclusiveness, and a deep and abiding commitment to secular values that people belonging to all faiths have an equal claim to the protection of law and of the state. These are some of the other issues which I believe ought to receive a lot more attention as we plan for the future. Therefore, I am very happy to be here today to participate in this interaction with you. I have learned a great deal. I hope that the Home Ministry will follow up on the suggestions that have been made, find out a list of urgent areas where there is need for immediate action, also devise a strategy where we can act, maybe not immediately but over a period of time, a medium and a long term strategy, giving our country a police system which is equal to the challenges that our country faces. I have had this chance to sit through the presentations. It is heartening for me to note that in spite of the rigors of your daily routine, you have all retained the analytical abilities to understand the problems that lie at the core of your work and come up with possible solutions to improve police administrations at the grassroots. The ability to analyze and resolve issues in a turbulent and changing world, keeping in view the larger national interest, is the fundamental reason why this country needs an all India service like yours. You have been charged with the wondrous responsibility of maintaining law and order and in ensuring peace and security across the length and breadth of our country. Law and order is fundamental to the existence of a functioning democracy and a civilized society in the country. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. I have great pleasure in welcoming you to the 9th annual meeting of the All India Council for Technical Education. Since our last meeting, the Constitution of the Council has been further revised to ensure better coordination in the work of the committees and the boards of the Council. I am happy that we have with us here today the chairman of the regional committees and the chairman of boards of studies of the council. In view of the importance of improving the quality of higher education, the central government decided last year to set up a University Grants Commission. This body has been entrusted not only with the task of assessing the financial needs of the universities but also with taking other appropriate steps for the maintenance and improvement of standards. I am glad to note that friendly relations have already been established between the University Grants Commission and the Council in the field of technical education. The University Grants Commission has accepted the suggestion of the Coordinating Committee to utilize the machinery of the Council for the assessment of the needs of the technological departments of the universities. I welcome on the Council the Chairman of the University Grants Commission as an ex officio member. We are meeting today after a lapse of more than a year and a half. During this period, our coordinating committee has been active in carrying out the policy and program laid down by us at the last meeting. The successful implementation of the 5-year plan on the general lines indicated by the Council is in no small measure due to the untiring efforts of the regional committees and other special committees. It is heartening to see that as a result of the work of these committees of the Council before the close of the first 5-year plan period, we shall have in the country a fair number of postgraduate courses in engineering and technology, as also arrangements for advanced work and research. We shall also have a network of facilities in management studies, a subject which has assumed great importance in recent times. An administrative staff, college, and a National Institute of Management will also have been set up largely through the efforts of the industry and commerce. At least 3, if not more, of the regional schools of the printing technology will also have been functioning because of the industry now. Last but by no means least, the needs of all the existing institutions preparing students for the first degree and diploma courses will not only have been assessed, but the majority of them will have largely completed their program of development. All this is by no means small achievement when one considers that the work was started only after February 1953 when the Council gave general directives on new developmental projects. The increasing interest which the state governments are taking in the work of the Council is evident from the reports of the work done by the regional committees as also the items put forward for consideration of the Council by some of the state governments. I am glad that the state governments are working hard to improve the provision for technical education within their states. I am sure that your deliberations on the points raised by them will help us to formulate policies and ensure coordinated development. The Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, has, as you will remember, been established in terms of the recommendations of the Council. Its progress has been remarkable. It has on its rolls today 1090 students receiving instruction from for the first degree and postgraduate course in various branches of engineering and technology. Some are also doing advanced work and research. Its board of governors has decided to introduce a number of courses at the postgraduate level commencing with the July 1955 session. Having regard to all the developments that have taken place in the country, the board has drawn up a plan under which the institute will ultimately have 1800 students in all, 1200 for the first degree courses and 600 for postgraduate courses and advanced work. I have every hope that in course of time this institute will develop into an institution of which India may well be proud. One of the important items on the agenda is the preparation of the second 5-year plan. I realize that it has come soon after the framing of detailed schemes to implement the first 5-year plan. The work done by the Council during the brief space of a year and 10 months has, however, brought to the forefront the various problems of technical education. We are therefore in a position to indicate the general lines of development for the 5-year period 1956-61. Although final decisions have not yet been taken, the general expectation is that the second 5-year plan will be an industrial plan. It is important, therefore, that we should plan ahead for the future. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, I come to the second amendment bill. Here, the Honorable Minister wants to make an improvement. I very well understand it, and to some extent it is welcome. He wants to cover an employee who has interrupted service and that interruption in service being created as result of his absence without leaving from service. The amendment bill proposes to include this interrupted period of service of such an employee within the meaning of continuing service for the purpose of payment of gratuity. This much I welcome. But I would like to point out to the Honorable Minister that regarding 240 working days, the ambiguity is still there and the day may not be far off when the Supreme Court may interpret in it another way, and you may have to come with another amending bill before the House. So that ambiguity should have been cleared by you. Here again, I beg to submit the Honorable Minister makes a provision which is entirely detrimental to the interests of the worker working in the factory or in some other establishment. Sir, I would like to draw the attention of Honorable Minister. Of course, he knows everything what is contained in the bill, that on page 2 of Payment of Gratuity Amendment Bill 1984, it says not being absence in respect of which an order imposing an punishment or penalty or treating the absence as break in service has been passed in accordance with the standing orders, rules or regulation, etc. Here again, an unscrupulous employer, the number of whom is not small in our country, of course, may take advantage of this provision and for some reason or other, even on flimsy or false grounds, may impose a break in service of an employee every 4 years and thereby deprive the employee of his legitimate claim of gratuity. So, this provision should not have been there, and I would submit to the Honorable Minister that the entire stipulations within bracket in this section 2A should be deleted for the workers working in factories if we want to do something better for the workers working in the factories and some other establishments. Madam, I would like to submit that the payment of gratuity act is now about a decade, more than a decade old, and this act seeks to provide a tiny dose of social security to working population. Further, I would like to draw the attention of the Honorable Minister to the fact that the working of this act, the experience of the working of this act, the payment of gratuity act 1972 for the last 12 years has not been too much success. There are certain drawbacks, flaws and lacunae in the payment of gratuity act 1972, and with these drawbacks and flaws the act is becoming less meaningful to the workers for whom this act is meant. I would like to mention just a few of them. There is a provision that a worker is entitled to get gratuity only after he has completed 5 years of service. Why should there be this limitation of 5 years? Let us take an example. Let us say a worker becomes disabled after 3 years of service. What will be his position? The demand of the working people is that such as person should be paid gratuity for the period of service rendered by him, so that with this gratuity amount he may be able to sustain himself for some days or for months or two. You should, I submit, at best to bring down this period of limitation to 1 year of service, because 1 year's duration of service is, I think, quite sufficient to access or gauge the performance of a worker or employee working in a particular establishment. Then again, madam, there is another drawback which lies in the Principal Act, namely the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972. That is, the gratuity amount of a worker is not adequately protected. Therefore, I would suggest that such a statutory measure should be brought forward by the government, which will enable the gratuity money to be adequately protected. There has been a constant demand from different sections of the workers that a gratuity fund should be created like the Provident Fund, with this difference that in the gratuity fund only the employer will be required to deposit his portion of the money. This fund should be kept quite apart by the employer for the payment of gratuity, and under no circumstances the employer shall be allowed to use the gratuity money for his own purpose. Such an arrangement should have been made in the Gratuity Act. Now, there is another thing, madam, which I would like to point out. Under the present provision, an employee is entitled to gratuity if he works or serves in an establishment which has at least 10 employees, initially at least. You have made an amendment that initially it should be 10. That is not a fair. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I am sorry, I cannot agree with my friend where he has said that the railways are serving the rich people more and better than the poor people. This statement is absolutely not correct. He has said that the fares have been going up. If you take into consideration the inflation that has been going on in the last 20 or 30 years, you will find that the fares have not been going up correspondingly. If you look into even catering also, the charges that we are making from the passengers, either by way of fares or by catering charges, are the lowest not only here but compared to the rest of the world. Even in our own country, you can not get the food that the railways supply outside the railway station for the price that the railways are charging. I do not think the railways are exploiting the poor people at all. Secondly, the railways have rendered a tremendous lot of service to people, especially the middle class and of course all other people by starting the superfast expresses and running them efficiently and safely on the whole. I have only one small criticism to make in this connection, and that is the proposal to raise the platform ticket fee from 1 rupee to 3 rupees is a very unwise thing to do, and the demand for the of the house from all sides is that it is a thing which is a very serious matter for the people and which the honorable minister as well as the cabinet should take a serious notice of. I sincerely hope that by the time the home minister begins to make his final statement either today or tomorrow or even after the consideration of the supplementary demands, government would find it possible to go back again to the earlier fee. Having said that, I have got to sound a note of warning in regard to the new trend of discussion that has been started in this house from the time that my friend had taken charge of the railways. He initiated the idea that the railways should not be asked to make any contribution to the general revenues on account of the 1000 crores of rupees that have been invested and more of it also which is being invested on the railways. I do not agree with him. At the same time, he wants the general revenues to make contribution to the railways because railways are serving some social purposes. True, we have been having it throughout the 120 years ever since the railways have been started in our country. They have been expected to serve social purpose as well as commercial purpose and they have been doing it. I do not understand why in spite of all this the railways should be exonerated from the responsibility of having to pay even a minimum dividend on the huge colossal amount of capital that has been invested and that is being invested also. I hope the Railway Convention Committee would take due note of this demand that we are making on behalf of the public that the railways have a responsibility to make contribution to the general revenues not as general revenues but as an interest whatever it may be. Now government is paying 10 or 15% on borrowings. It needs not pay as much as that but at least half as much as that or one third as much as that, but there should be contribution from the railways. Another thing which my honorable friend started and which has been taken advantage of by successive railway ministers from our side is to place all the blame on the planning commission and then somehow suddenly from all sides all our members jump into the fray and they exonerate the railways. They forget the primary responsibility of the railways to make the best possible use of the monies that have been placed at their disposal, the assets that have been placed at their disposal, and go on blaming the planning commission. Planning commission means the central government, the whole of the parliament. How else does the planning commission function? I cannot understand. If the railways want more money, they should be able to make out a good enough case and get in from the finance minister and from the government. If they are not able to make a good enough case and at the same time they say that the planning commission is not allotting this money and that money, I would have said that it is the high of irresponsibility. It is the duty of the railway minister and the government as a whole to go into the whole finances of the railways and find out how much money has to be placed at their disposal. Are the railways utilizing the funds that are being placed at their disposal? Are they utilizing their assets to the best possible advantages? I am not very sure about it. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I think the House will agree with me that the Health Minister, while piloting this bill to us, made a very brilliant and studied presentation and explanation on the various provisions of this bill, and I wish to join other honorable members in congratulating warmly the Health Minister for the initiative and imagination with which he has been dealing with this terrible problem. This is a good measure in the right direction because of the fact that several of the honorable members who have spoken before me have touched on the various aspects of the law. I would rather view this piece of legislation more from human and philosophical angles than from a purely legislative angle. A piece of legislation such as this, which is a social economic legislation, obviously is to be preceded by public opinion and backed up too by public opinion. I understand that it is only the pressure of the public opinion which has compelled government to proceed in the right direction, and they have rightly gone, but it is continuous pressure of public opinion which will make the government find out what are the effective ways and provisions in the legislation and what are the defective things which can be later on removed by further amendments. I hope the government will have a constant eye on how the public opinion reacts to the various legal and penal provisions contained in this measure. The post-war period, particularly since 1945, has been a period of tremendous advances in science and technology, but the trouble is that though science and technology have advanced, that advance in accompanied by an equally good advance in spirituality and truth. When science and technology unaccompanied by spirituality and truth go ahead, they create havoc sometimes, and one of the havocs created is what we see today, this adulteration in the space of food articles, drinks, etc. This unsocial attitude and profiteering mentality about which the minister made a very right reference in the beginning of a very small minority has a tremendous impact on a big majority, I should say the entire nation. These unsocial and anti-social attitudes and activities have to go, but they cannot be vanished merely by legislation. They will ultimately go by the pressures of a very strong and continuously vigilant public opinion and enlighten public opinion all over the country. As I said, I was going to view this piece of legislation from a philosophical angle. I feel that today ours is not only an atomic age, this is also an age of indifference. Coupled with that, we now see that it is the age of adulteration, pollution, and age of abject pollution. We find that citizens even when their interests are concerned, are not interested in trying to eradicate those disease or those danger or defects. Ultimately, the state cannot do beyond a certain point. It is the citizen rightful vigilance and active involvement which can really do a lot in terms of eradicating some of these social evils. Do we find adulteration only in food articles or only in drinks? I dare say adulteration and pollution are found these days in each and every field. Take the political field, the economic field, the social field, the educational, cultural, literary, and even religious fields. In fact, no field of human activity is today left out where there is not some kind of adulteration practiced. The trouble, therefore, is that when we are sitting in judgment over those food adulterators, we are forgetting that in every walk of life where we have certain things to project or inject into human activity, we are also responsible for a number of such crimes of adulteration. Therefore, I feel that when we look at this problem, we should not forget to look at this problem in its totality also. When it comes to food and drink adulteration, I want to say that it is not only injurious to health, but it means slow and systematic and daily death. Death may come at the end, but before it comes, finally, the man is failing in health, failing in the energy, and failing in exhibition because of the adulteration. Therefore, I feel that if you want to tackle this problem, then the government must also, through this legislation, do two things. The minister has already made a mention of it. First is the implementation. Implementation must be quick and speedy, and we must guard against possible increase in corruption also, because after all, when the state's machinery or any machinery for that matter has to implement, we must not empower that machinery with such powers that the honest and the innocent are harassed. I know the minister himself said in the beginning that undue punishment and harassment will not be done to honest traders in this regard. Therefore, I want that the implementation should be quick, and at the same time, proper safeguards should be there to see that corruption does not creep in a greater amount. Stop.